So in my sermon reflection for today, I want to firstly draw you back to what we discussed last week. In last week's reading set for the Sunday and for the sermon, and that I used in my sermon, we looked at the gospel account of Jesus walking on the water and calling Peter out to him, and Peter going out to Jesus. And I tied in some of the Paul's letter to the Romans, where he writes that all who call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. And there was a challenge in that sermon in that how can someone come to call on Jesus without having believed? How do they come to believe without having heard? How do they come to hear without someone telling them about Jesus? And how does someone tell people about Jesus without first being sent? And that was a challenge that we are all set through our baptism to go out and tell people the good news, the gospel of Jesus Christ, and what difference Jesus makes in our lives. So I looked briefly at how Peter, the disciples on the boat in their time of need, called upon Jesus and were saved. And I then also explored when Peter stepped out in faith, and then he started to sink because he looked around him and became afraid of the wind and the storm, and started to sink. He called out again to Jesus, and Jesus saved him. Immediately Jesus reached out. But I then explored the words of Jesus, "You of little faith, why do you doubt?" And in my sermon I was reflecting how when we apply tone, was it "you of little faith, why did you doubt"? Was it a reprimand, admonishing Peter, or was it "Peter, you have little faith, why did you doubt? Look how far you came"? And then he takes Peter back into the boat and comforts him, getting ready to send him back out. And so it's all about the tone that we want to apply based on our knowledge of Jesus and times when Jesus was righteous, had righteous anger towards people. Now today's reflection and the readings, there's a huge parallel. Last week there was a miracle. This week there's a miracle, this time of healing. Last week the disciples and Peter, believers, called out to Jesus. Jesus was there for him. This week the Canaanite woman calls out to Jesus, "Lord, Son of David, help me, help my daughter," and Jesus is there for her. Now, I realize there's a bit to explore here, but ultimately she called upon Jesus, and through her faith, her daughter was healed. So we have these parallels with people who call upon Jesus being saved. We have parallels of miracles occurring. We have parallels in that there's a bit of a twist. We need to explore the actions and words of Jesus to understand what's going on. And then when we tie in the passage from Romans, last week it was about about being sent. This week it's more, there's this commentary about being grafted, a wild olive branch being grafted to the cultivated olive tree, and ultimately becoming one with the olive tree and being fed by the same roots. And so I want to tie in a little bit of that as well. So again, Jesus is there for people who call upon him. And we see that even if you're not of the faith, as this Canaanite woman was not a Jew or follower necessarily of Jesus, she called upon the Lord, and he responded. And when we look then at the message from Romans, ultimately that is God's desire, is that the wild olive branches are grafted onto the cultivated tree, which is the family of God, which is fed by the same roots, which is Jesus Christ. And ultimately, which then go on to bear fruit, which are fruits of the Holy Spirit, how we live our life. how we interact with the people around us and care for those in need and respond to those in need, protect those who require protecting, speaking out for those who have no voice for themselves. Those are the fruits that we are to bear once we are grafted to the same tree and fed spiritually by the same root, Jesus Christ. Now, what about the interaction though with the Canaanite woman, or I think it's in Mark's Gospel, the Syrophoenician woman? Same woman, it describes slightly differently, but essentially coming from the same region. What's going on here? And how do we interpret this in our understanding of who Jesus is and his interactions with those people around him? So, just a quick recap of the story. Jesus has left the area of Gennesaret and gone to Phoenicia. He's left the region of the Jews and gone to Phoenicia, and we're told he's in near the towns of Tyre and Sidon, which are maybe 30 miles apart or something, I think, when I was looking that up. So it's on the coast. It's a fair way away from Jewish capital, and you would expect there to be non-Jews in that area. And so Jesus is traveling about with his disciples, possibly having a break from the relentless pressure put on him by the Pharisees and the questioning and the challenging. He's also having to start preparing himself for the journey ahead to Jerusalem. And so we have this account of, whilst he's in this region, a Canaanite woman comes up to him. And she's crying out, "Lord, a son of David, help me." And the disciples are getting frustrated with this woman who's causing them a nuisance. "Lord, send her away." Now, some commentaries say that they imply, do what she bids and get rid of her. And other commentaries that I've read imply, just send her away. And so these were some of Jesus's responses. So, as with last week, I looked at both his action and his words. And when we put the words to different tones, we get different meanings. And we have to be, I suppose, intentional in trying to understand what the tone would have been in this context. So when we look at this passage, "Send her away," the disciples say, "Send her away, for she keeps calling out after us." And Jesus said in reply, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But the woman came and did him homage. So she came and worshipped him and said, "Lord, help me." Now we know that she's calling out for Jesus to help not only her, but her daughter, who she says is tormented by a demon. Now this is the interesting bit. Jesus' reply to her, when she is there, paying him homage, kneeling down, worshipping him, saying, "Help me," he says, "It is not right to take the food of the children and throw to the dogs." Now, what is going on there? That is a terrible thing to say, even by today's standards. That was a grave insult in Jesus' day, calling someone a dog. And often you were referring to the dogs who were, the mongrel in the street, the disease, the scavengers. It was not a polite term to call someone a dog. And he's saying, it's not right for me to give the food that is set aside for children to the dogs. Now, why did he say that? And did he say it like when last week when he spoke to Peter about not having faith? Did he say it as a reprimand? Or was it said somehow differently? You see, it all comes down to tone, I believe. And when we also look at the Greek word used, now the Greek word for dog that he used was Canaria. And this doesn't refer to the wild dog of the streets, the scavenger. This is the family pet. It's the diminutive word for dog. And so I wonder whether he is engaging with this woman before he gives her what she wants. What brought her to him? What is it that drew her to Jesus, saying, Lord, help my daughter? Is it a matter of faith? Or is it, you look like a wealthy person, you've got people traveling around with you, you must be important? I don't know. But Jesus engages with her. And I like to interpret it not so much as a reprimand, but a glint of humor in his eye, a smile as he says his words. And many a time, even today, we can say things that mean completely the opposite because of our body language and our expression and the tone when we call a friend a rascal or whatever it might be. We can say something that means the complete opposite through our body language. So what was Jesus saying? I like to think he's saying, is it right to give the food that I bring to the children of Israel to those who are not the children of Israel, to the Gentiles? Posed as a question, perhaps as a, what do you think? And she, being of quick wit, replies, please, Lord, for even the dogs eat the scraps that fall from the table of their masters. And you can almost imagine Jesus breaking out in a smile, in that recognition that it is a matter of faith, that she's engaged with him. He's asked the question, is this a matter of faith? Remember, the food that he's talking about here, in a sense, that spiritual food, the feeding of the 5,000, that's not an issue for Jesus. The spiritual food is not an issue for Jesus. It's not a limited supply. There's no drought. So the food for the children, there's plenty. There's more than enough. Jesus knows that. But he's asking this woman, what does it mean for you to be coming to me, asking for this? And it is an act of faith, an admission of faith, admission of faith, that she's saying, I come to you asking for help. And Jesus, his response, let it be done for you as you wish. And the action, and her daughter was healed from that hour. So, when we look at this passage, again, a miraculous account, Jesus healing this woman's daughter, not even being present, just saying, let it be done. This miraculous account, and this questionable interaction, when we look at it with tone and our understanding of who Jesus is and how he loved all and his messages for all, we get a different understanding of it if we read it as a question probing this woman's faith rather than a reprimand. And when we tie that in with the passage from Romans about the tree, the body, the family of God, the kingdom, has natural branches and also grafted branches. And that tree all goes on to produce fruit because it is fed by the same rootstock, Jesus Christ. When we tie that in, we see that as Christians, as believers, we are to continue to spread the good news of Jesus Christ, not just amongst ourselves, not just within our holy huddle and our own circles and congratulating ourselves for coming to believe, but we are called to go out into the world and share that message with the wild olive trees, with the wild branches, so that, as we heard last week, Jesus can save all who call upon his name. So we are called, again, to go out. We are called to cultivate the tree, the olive tree, God's kingdom here on earth, where we are, wherever we are. In our case, St. John's Anglican Church, Harvey Bay, but wherever you may be in your faith communities. But we're called to go out and to spread the good news, share our faith with others, knowing that that is ultimately God's desire, to bring others in to God's kingdom. We are part of that mission. It is a core mission of our Christian faith. So, my time is up. I'll leave you with that challenge. How are you, as with last week, going to go out this week and engage others? Share your faith with others. Draw others into the body of Christ, the church, the kingdom of heaven, the cultivated olive tree, so that we all can be fed by the same source, Jesus Christ, who is our foundation, our rootstock. So, good luck. Bless you all. Amen.